So let us look at the syllabus once. So it is 18 CIB 59. You can see the syllabus here. It is 18 CIB 59, which comprises of 1 hour teaching hours. The CIE is for 40 marks and the SE is for 60 marks. So it consists of 1 credit and also 2 hours of examination hours. Mostly this paper will be for 60 marks, which comprise of the multiple choice questions. Okay, I think we will conduct your internals also in that way itself. It comprises of question and 4 answers. You have to choose the right answer. Coming to the syllabus, you can see the ecosystems and the biodiversity. The second module comprises of the advances in energy systems and natural resource management. The third module comprises of environmental pollution and waste management and public health aspects. The fourth module comprises of the global environmental concerns, and the fifth module comprises of the latest developments in environmental pollution mitigation tools, that is application of your remote sensing and GIS. Okay, so this is the syllabus that is confined to you in the environmental studies. So today we shall start our discussion on the ecosystems. Okay, so what do you mean by ecosystem? See, the contents comprised in this session is the ecosystems, principles of ecosystem, components, movement of energy and nutrients, linkages, and also environmental limitation. Now, first one, what is an ecosystem? See, ecosystem is a balanced unit comprising of one or more organisms which are grouped in such a way that they interact with each other and they live in their respective environments, so that the grouping is preserved. Okay, it is grouping of organisms that interact with each other and their environment in such a way to preserve the grouping. So in an ecosystem, what happens is fishes always lives in water and they group the fishes itself and they correspond to their own group itself. Clearly, similarly, human beings, they make group of human beings of themselves and they interact with their itself. They not go outside the other people. They interact with their own environment so that the grouping is being preserved. Such one is called as a ecosystem. There is a variety of ecosystems. You can see examples are the, you got the wetland ecosystem, you got the grassland ecosystem, you got the tropical ecosystem, you got the temperate ecosystem, you got the desert ecosystem, you got the forest ecosystem, you got the other types. Okay, so you got the tundra ecosystem. Okay, so all these ecosystems are quite different in their own forms, but they interact with their own environments. Coming to the energies, how the interaction take place. See, you can see light is the main source of energy that is obtained from the sun. You know that without light there is no activity that will take place on the earth itself. Okay, light is the main source of energy, and using the sunlight which is obtained from the sun in the form of heat and radiation, there are phytoplanktons, there are zooplanktons, there are herbivores, there are carnivores and the decomposers, there are bacteria and fungi, and also there are sediment that contains these nutrients. All these reactions take place in an ecosystem. So this is a small example for a pond ecosystem, wherein you can see there are herbivorous plants, there are carnivorous plants and carnivorous animals, there are herbivores, zooplankton. So coming to the how exactly this ecosystem take place, you can see how exactly this linkages takes place. See, precipitation is one form wherein water falls from onto the ground in the form of rain. Okay, when there is precipitation going on, the water will be infiltrated into the ground, thereby the water is being absorbed by the producers. So the plants and the trees becomes the producers. They produce the food using sunlight and carbon dioxide in presence of green pigment called chlorophyll. They produce their own food, and that process is called as photosynthesis. Okay, using photosynthesis you can say that the producers produce their own food. Okay, using carbon dioxide and sunlight in presence of water and also chlorophyll. So this soil also contains some of the important mineral nutrients within them. Soil also contains some important soluble mineral nutrients like your potassium, sodium, manganese, magnesium, iron, zinc, calcium, all those things. So roots take up this mineral matter along with water. The roots take up the mineral matter along with water, and then they produce their food. Okay, so the food that is being produced by the plants are consumed by the consumers, that is the primary consumers. The producers are the ones which are called autotrophs, which has got the capacity to produce their own food. So the primary consumers are dependent on the producers, and in turn the secondary consumers are dependent on the primary consumers. Okay, so what happens is the producers starts to produce the food, they in turn are being consumed by the primary consumers. So the primary consumers are consumed by secondary consumers, and this is a cycle or which is a chain which is continuous in nature. Okay, so what are the major principles of the ecosystem? So there are three major principles of the ecosystem. One is nutrient cycling, energy flow, and the structure. Nutrient cycling means it is the movement of chemical elements from the environment into the living organisms and from them back to the environment. So it is just nothing but the environments. In the environment, what happens is what happens is there is continuous movement of the chemical elements in the environment. So there is movement of chemical elements from the environment into the living organisms, and from them back into the environment. The organisms live, they grow, they die and decompose. What happens is, any organism will live, they will grow using the elements that are available in the nature, and when they die, they decompose, and finally the nutrients goes back to the environment itself. So that is nutrient cycling. It is a continuous cycle. So next is the energy flow. Energy is required to transform into inorganic or nutrients into organic tissues of an organism. See, there are a lot of inorganic nutrients like the calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, iron, manganese, zinc. All these are inorganic nutrients. So human beings consume them, and those inorganic nutrients are being converted into organic matter. That is the capacity of the organism. That is done in the tissues. Okay. So how it is possible? It is through the energy. The energy that is present in the body stimulates, and it is the driving force to work of the ecosystem. And finally is the structure. It refers to the pattern of the interrelationships that exist between organisms in an ecosystem. So coming to the nutrient cycle, you can see the input is the solar energy. Sun is the main source of energy. So using the solar energy, there are the small algae which produce their food, which are autotrophs in nature. They produce food, and which is consumed by man. Human beings releases carbon dioxide, which is consumed by algae. Okay. Similarly, human beings, there are certain body wastes that are being released, which are decomposed by the bacteria, which get converted into nutrients and water and are being consumed. So the output is the heat. Okay. Both the algae, human beings and bacteria releases the heat, which is the output form. Okay. So next is the energy flow. This is for your nutrient cycling. This is the energy flow. The solar energy is the main source of energy. Plant tissues absorb this one. They are being transformed in the body tissues and also by the bacteria, and heat energy is being released. So coming to the structure, you can see the input. There are producers which produce the food, which are being consumed by the consumers, and the output. Sometimes the consumers die and decompose, and again they form the producer. Producers also liberates the energy. Okay. So these are the main three important issues that are being found in the nature. Coming to the nutrient cycling, energy flow and structure, all of them in a single phase. See here, sun is the main source of energy. Using the sunlight, the producers produce the food, which are called as autotrophs. Okay. So producers are being consumed by herbivores, and in turn herbivores are consumed by the carnivores. Okay. At all of them, there is some amount of heat and energy that is being liberated. There is some amount of heat and energy being liberated. Okay. So all these three will die. All these three will die. The producers will also die, the herbivores also will die, the carnivores will also die, and they decompose. When they decompose, they form the nutrient pool. That is in nutrients. Again, that nutrients, using those nutrients, the producers starts to produce the food. All of them, there are some amount of energy that are being liberated out. Okay. Now you can see the continuous lines always marks the nutrient cycle, the mineral movement, the movement of minerals, whereas the dotted line represents the energy flows. Okay. Producers, are consumed by herbivores, there are some amount of energy that is being flown. Herbivores are being consumed by carnivores, there are some amount of energy being flown, and during which there are some amount of energy that is being released into the atmosphere. When all these three die, they form the decomposers are being decomposing them. There are a lot of energy that's being released. So they again come back to the nutrient pools. But why in the nutrient pool and back to the producer, there is no energy that is being given out. Only mineral movement take place. Okay. So coming to the components of the ecosystem, there are two important components: abiotic component and the biotic component. Abiotic components are the ones which do not have life, but which support the life systems. They do not have life, but they in turn they support the life systems. Biotic components are the ones which have life. Okay, like the producers, plants, they have their life. Okay, using the sunlight energy, they produce organic matter from inorganic nutrients. Okay, consumers and also decomposers. But the abiotic components are directly helpful to the biotic components for the production of food. Now, for example, if there was no sunlight, then there was no energy that is being utilized by the producers to produce the food, so that the organic matter is not produced from the inorganic nutrients. So once the inorganic nutrients are not being converted into organic matter, that will not be taken up by plants to produce their food. Then the decomposers or the consumers cannot consume them, as they cannot consume the inorganic matter, and even the decomposers cannot decompose them. So abiotic components are directly helpful to the biotic components. Okay. Coming to the abiotic components, they form the environment and determine the type of structure of the environment or the ecosystem, like your sunlight, nutrients, that is rainfall, minerals, carbon, nitrogen. So you can see the types of ecosystem comprise of the tropical terrain forest, desert ecosystem, tundra, grasslands, etc. How the distribution of vegetation or the ecosystem can be seen? It is mainly based on temperature and rainfall. Okay, if the rainfall is very less, then it becomes a hot desert. If it is medium, then it is temperate. If the rainfall is very high, it becomes a cool desert. Similarly, if the rainfall is very high, then it becomes a tropical forest. If it is medium, it becomes deciduous forest. Deciduous forests are the ones where they shed their leaves. Okay, leaves are being shed down by the plants. And if it is very high, it becomes a cool forest, that is spruce fir forest. Coming to the biotic components, there are two important biotic components. They are the producers and the consumers. Okay, producers are the autotrophs. All green plants, they use solar energy, chlorophyll, inorganic nutrients, and water to produce their own food. The process is called as photosynthesis. On the other hand, consumers are the ones, they consume the organic compounds in plant and animals by eating. Okay, there are different ones: primary feeders, plant feeders, that is herbivores, which are primary consumers; carnivores, which are meat eaters, they are secondary consumers; and omnivores, which are the general feeders. Coming to the biotic components, decomposers are a very important part of the biotic components, because they are the tiny organisms which includes the bacteria and fungi, which turn the organic compounds in dead and plants and animals into inorganic materials. See, what happens is, when plants and animals are living, they convert the inorganic matter into organic matter. Okay, they convert the inorganic mineral nutrients into organic matter. But similarly, when plants and animals die, the organic matter present in them are being converted into inorganic compounds. Okay, that is the beauty of the environment. Clear? So that is very important. See, if there were no decomposers that are present in the atmosphere, now from millions of years ago, there are a lot of animals that have been died, and you just imagine how much amount of the corpus or the dead bodies were present in the atmosphere or the environment. Then, how could we would have walked on it? We should have walked on the dead bodies itself. We have to thank the decomposers which are present in the environment, so that with the help of them they decompose or they convert the organic materials that are present in the plants and animals into inorganic materials. Okay, that is how the recyclation of the chemicals within the ecosystem is being maintained. Okay, when we are living, we convert the inorganic material into organic material, but when we die, the same organic material that is present in the body is being converted into inorganic materials. This is how a small example for your pond ecosystem, how exactly the things can happen. You can see the sunlight, which is the main source of energy. The producers, the rooted plants produce the food which are being consumed by the bacteria and fungi. Those bacteria and fungi are almost they are being consumed by the primary consumers. So primary consumers are being consumed by the secondary consumers. Okay, so during which there are a lot of excreta that are being left out from the organisms, which forms the dissolved chemicals which forms the sediments. Okay, so there are certain decomposers like the bacteria and fungi, which in turn which convert those dead and decaying plants. Like there are some phytoplanktons, zooplanktons, when they die, they are being decomposed by certain bacteria and fungi present in the ecosystem. Coming to the biotic components and the food chain, you can see solar energy, which is main source of energy. It is being consumed by the plants, the producers. This is the first trophic level. Okay, so there are a lot of amount of energy that's being released into the form of heat into the atmosphere. So the producers are being consumed by the primary consumers, that is herbivores. They become the second trophic levels, and the second trophic levels, they are being consumed by the secondary consumers, carnivores, which forms the third trophic levels. And also during which there is lot amount of heat that is being liberated, and the third trophic levels, they are being consumed by the fourth trophic levels, like the top carnivores, and also heat is being liberated. When all of them die, when all these three levels also die, they are being decomposed in the atmosphere using the decomposers. Movement of energy and nutrients, there are three important processes. One is food chain, food webs, trophic level biomass, and the biomes. So what is a food chain? See, food chain is a particular pathway of nutrients and energy movement which depends on which the organism feeds on another. Okay, so you know that autotrophs, it is a continuous cycle. Autotrophs, they produce their food, they are being consumed by herbivores. Herbivores are being consumed by the carnivores. Carnivores are being consumed by omnivores. Okay, so it is continuous cycle. Carnivores are not dependent on autotrophs, but they are dependent on the herbivores. Herbivores are not dependent on the carnivores, but they are dependent on the autotrophs. Okay, autotrophs on the other hand are dependent on the sunlight. So all of them are interdependent on one another, and they form a continuous chain like structure, so which is called as a food chain. Okay, you can see all of them are being released. When they die, they form the decomposers. So these are the food webs. You can see here exactly the plants or the trees, they produce their food. So deer is dependent on these plants. Okay, in turn mountain lions are dependent on the deers. Similarly, vegetables and grass are being dependent on the rabbits and the squirrels. Okay, those ones, and also seed eating birds, they are dependent on the mice. Mice is consuming all these things. So this mice is being consumed by shrews, snakes, and also owls, and also foxes. Similarly, seed eating birds are being consumed by owls and the foxes. Squirrels are also consumed by the owls and the foxes. Rabbit is being consumed by the owls, foxes, and also snakes, and also the mountain lions. Finally, all these them are them dependent on the mountain lions, because you can see the trophic levels increases. Okay, there are a lot of decomposers. The trophic level, as we go on the top level of the pyramid, the dependency decreases. Okay, there is only one animal which is consuming all these. Okay, so trophic level means it is a feeding level. Okay, first level is all producers, second level is all herbivores, third level is all first level carnivores, fourth level is second level carnivores, and so on. The level increases. Okay, so what happens is, in energy and nutrients which are passed through the ecosystem by food chains and webs from lower trophic level to higher trophic level, only 5 to 20% energy and the nutrients are transferred from one level to higher levels very successfully. So what all everything we eat are not being consumed or consumed as energy. Okay, only 5 to 20% of energy is being obtained by the food that we eat. Rest of them are being removed out in the form of wastes. Okay, similarly in the ecosystem also 5 to 20% of energy are being utilized. Okay, so that is why what happens is, the first level has got largest number of organisms, second level has got little bit less than that of the first one, the third level has got a little bit less than the second level, and so on. Okay, so you can see the pyramid levels. The first level energy, that is the producers, they are at the bottom of the pyramid, they are large in number. Okay, the primary consumers are a bit less in number, the secondary consumers are also less in number, finally the tertiary consumers are also being very tapering. As we go on the top of the pyramid, it tapers. Okay, so I think we'll stop our discussion here. If you have got any questions, you can ask me now. Okay, drop in your attendances so that I can put the attendance status of all your people. You drop in your name and also your user number in the chat box. So we shall continue discussion next class. Thank you very much.